Good evening and welcome to Noble Reporting. This is your host Dale Noble reporting. In the headlines this week, Jeremy Kyle was told by ITV to get off their stage. The UN Secretary General declares jihad on hate speech. Legendary actress and singer Doris Day passed away this week by the light of the silvery moon. The civilians of Niger and Nigeria have lost their heads to the comeback of boy band Boko Haram. The voters were right as the polls got it wrong again in the Australian election. And Arnold Schwarzenegger was terminated after being drop-kicked from behind during his visit to South Africa. But first, The Jeremy Kyle Show, a flagship daytime program for ITV, was axed this week following the suicide of one of its guests. Various news outlets have taken vested interest in the situation, all of a sudden voicing concern for the working class people that were exploited. After 14 years on air, the middle classes took up their mantle as the protector of the working classes. This is particularly true when the working class viewership, the dominant demographic for the show, resist the cancellation as they needed saving from themselves. It was also shown that this oversight is far easier in this day and age, as the entirety of the catalogue was expunged from the online services available, showing that disagreeable content can be safeguarded against. To hammer home the point, the media have dragged into light further cases of suicide potentially linked to the show from years ago, including a man who overdosed on painkillers after watching the show for 5 minutes. The furore caused by this drama has led to further calls to cancel other exploitative reality TV shows, such as Love Island, The Only Way is Essex, and Britain's Got Talent. Though it is arguable as to whether these should be banned due to the public health risk that they cause with their brain hemorrhaging stupidity. Due to the increasing candour in following this banning trend, ITV finds itself in crisis, as 90% of their platform occupies this space. In Christchurch, New Zealand, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called for solidarity in attempts to fight hate speech. His statement was made whilst visiting Linwood Mosque and Al-Noor Mosque, the sites of the shootings back in March. Exploiting the fears and ignorance of the uninformed public, Gutierrez directed grievances to social media, claiming them as platforms for bigotry, whilst stating that public discourse is being coarsened. He explained his initiative to extinguish the scourge of hate speech, as there is no room for it, online or offline, by creating a UN team to scale up a global plan of action against the phenomenon. He then proceeded to quote the Holy Quran, a book noted for a level of bigotry and coarse rhetoric that serves as a foundation for groups such as Hamas and Boko Haram, and nations such as Iran, where the hijab is legally mandatory, and Pakistan, where blasphemy leads to the death sentence. This authoritarian-sounding rhetoric from a man who represents an organization aiming for global peace and stability is, of course, to save people from themselves. Acting and singing legend Doris Day entered that star lift to heaven on Monday at the age of 97 after contracting pneumonia. She was best known for her roles in Calamity Jane, Pillow Talk, and The Man Who Knew Too Much, and also for the song Que Sera, Sera. She became a staunch advocate for animal welfare, setting up the Doris Day Animal Foundation in 1978, as she was no fan of that touch of mink. During her later years, she became reclusive, actively seeking ways of telling people, do not disturb. And who can blame her? Just hours after the star's passing, people declared, move over, darling, and took to media to politicize her life. Most frequently, she has been referred to as a gay icon, with references to her friendship with gay film star Rock Hudson and her supposed lesbian turn in Calamity Jane. I do wonder if it's a great feeling to find purpose in using someone's passing for your own agenda. If it happened to Jane, it could happen elsewhere too. Lucky me, I suppose, for being on the winning team, for not having to make everything about the tunnel of love and the pajama game. It seems a shame that this has occurred, but human nature is such that if you tell someone, please don't eat the daisies, they will probably turn around and do so. After 10 years of fighting the Nigerian government, the Islamist group Boko Haram has once more increased the frequency of their attacks. The Boko Haram movement began in Borno State in Nigeria, but the reach of the group, like many of their fighters, exploded, bringing the entire country and some of its neighbors into conflict. Millions of people have been displaced during this conflict, creating large camps of refugees that try to stay ahead of the murderous group. Tens of thousands of people have been killed and hundreds kidnapped, with the internationally recognized case of the Chibok schoolgirls still remaining a mystery after 5 years. Much of the activity seems to be around the Lake Chad region, as neither side is prepared to cook. Most recently, attacks have been carried out against the villages of Diffa in southeastern Niger and a military base in northwestern Nigeria. The escalation in conflict has seen the forces from Niger and Nigeria form a coalition to deal with the threat, along with the affected neighbours of Cameroon and Chad. In a shock result, the supposedly unpopular Liberal National Coalition has managed to win the Australian elections. This is despite problems with candidates being homophobic, anti-Islam, and sexist, meaning that Australia is not all that different from the civilized world as we thought. This result is suggested to have stemmed from a couple of factors. Firstly, the coalition leader, Scott Morrison, shifted the focus from party candidates to his leadership, in a sort of focus placed upon the cult of personality. Secondly, the majority of voters sought economic stability, of which the coalition offered. This is an area where Labour floundered upon, very much in similarity to the namesake of the UK. What is perhaps most surprising of all is that the election result went against the prediction of the polls, which we, the media, had placed much stock in. Oh well, you can't get them all, am I right? And finally, former Governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, was assaulted during an event in South Africa. The 71-year-old Hollywood star was engaging with fans at a skipping competition when a man went commando and drop-kicked him from behind. One of the onlookers is reported as saying, "Well, that hit the spot." The opportunistic predator was wrestled to the ground whilst the former Mr. Olympia recovered from his tumble. As the attacker was dragged away by the police, Schwarzenegger was heard saying, "Hasta la vista, baby." After the event, we caught up with Mr. Schwarzenegger and asked if this experience has put him off from visiting South Africa in the future, to which he glibly said, "I'll be back." That is all for this week. Thank you for tuning in to Noble Reporting. See you next Sunday.